So I just want to officially welcome all of you to our quarterly ALS meeting. And thank you for the work that you've done this last week, which has been, kind of a challenging week for all of us. One of the things about redesigning the Title III monitoring was to change the observation tool, which is on the Title III website. So if you want to actually refresh yourself in relationship to monitoring, you can go to the Title III website under funding and monitoring and identify. You can download team members guidelines as well as LEA guidelines, and then the new observation tool. And so, everything is on the Title III website. And one of these meetings, maybe with the new ALS directors in August, I'll review everything that's available there. I'm also adding some standard operating procedures under the resources so that you actually see the processes used for funding, because I keep getting asked that, which I understand. So the Title III website has everything that you need. The other thing is that the application for the next cohort for interpreters, that's on the homepage as well. And I actually think we have something like, I don't know, 70 candidates in this next cohort to be interpreters, which is pretty spectacular. The other thing is, just so you know, there's going to be an advanced training. And previously we thought that if you did the first Title I USBE certification, then you would go on to the next one. Well, there are a lot of people in the first cohort. We actually had 118 applicants and 52 are certified now, and they want to do the advanced training. But I'm actually opening the advanced training up to everybody in the state because no one has to pay for it, right? And as soon as I get the information, which will be in mid-February, I'll send it out to everybody, and we can start registering for the advanced 40-hour training. And I think Bev was on the committee when we actually looked at the criteria for the 40-hour training to be outsourced. So I'm not doing that. I'm only doing the 10-hour training. And so this provides people, a really important leverage for implementing HB 302. So I'm going to start with a couple of people who I know that have to leave, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. And again, the monitoring for Title III has changed because using the observation tool to identify what teachers are already doing with a high effect size is actually really important instead of, not looking at the assets that teachers actually bring to the classroom and what that means for students. So, Skylar, I know you have a meeting at 9. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I'm one of the assistant principals up in Sandridge Junior High in Weaver School District. And yeah, with the observation tool, when we went around together and observed some classes, I had given you that template. So I actually was trying to find the copy of the template before coming here and to be more specific. But what I do recall about the observation tool was it took the opinion out of it. And it took out my own personal bias from what I was seeing, and it just what we had talked about was just focusing on factual data. What did we see? What strategies were used? And it took whether or not I liked it. It took that out of it and it just focused on the objective side of things. So I really did think that it was pretty clean and easy to use. But like I said, to get more specific, I didn't have that template in front of me because I had handed those over to you.
Yeah, that's fine, Skylar. And the other thing is, we ended up going to this amazing science class. I can't remember the teacher's name, but she was like, she was using AI effectively. She was using um, microscopes so kids could actually record observations on a Chromebook instead of, end up, um, doing, I don't know, on the screen software stuff. So it was incredibly interactive. And so these are the kinds of instructional practices that we value and that Utah should be proud of. So I just want to thank Skylar for joining me in the observations and, our conversations in between the classrooms. It was a real joy for me personally. So thank you so much, Skylar.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry I have to hop off. I will give that teacher a little shout out because she deserves it. Her name's Layla Hardy, even though you guys might not know her. She's amazing. So yeah, thank
She
you.
is, she's wonderful. If you ever want to see a great middle school um, science class, get in touch with Skylar or me or Weber School District. There was another one, and I didn't ask him. He's the principal of Bonneville High School in Weber. And I saw one of the best science courses there as well, where they were using Chromebooks with a wireless sensor so that they could test pH balances, and then the data would actually go to the Chromebook so that it could be visualized. So all these things are really wonderful, and we should share them with each other. And just let me know if you want to come and we can set up a visit with, all these amazing teachers so you can actually see the kind of quality instruction that so many Utah teachers are providing for our students. So, since we're on the Weber kind of end of things, Priscilla, do you want to talk about just introduce yourself and then your role and then your actual experience of using the observation tool?
Of course. So good morning, everyone. My name is Priscila Furlaneto. So I work at Weber School District as an EL facilitator. So I would love to share how impactful Dr. Estrada's visit was for our team here at Weber School District, particularly in learning how to use the USB observation tool. So before her visit, our approach to classroom observations was shaped by years of focusing on what wasn't happening in the classroom, what the teacher wasn't doing, or what was missing, right? So the mindset this mindset often made the observation process kind of like heavy and a negative experience, not only for teachers, but also for the observers as well, right? So Dr. Estrada helped us shift our perspective entirely, and it's made all the difference. So her training emphasized the importance of observing an asset-based lens, looking at the strengths and the resources both teachers and students bring to the classroom. So I think this approach allowed us to reframe how we review classrooms, focusing on recognizing and celebrating effective practices rather than just like identifying gaps, right? So by doing that, we've created an environment of support and collaboration later, where feedback feels constructive and empowering rather than just critical. So we're so grateful for Dr. Estrada's guidance in helping us reimagine this process. So learning to use the USB observation tool not only was amazing because we could like change our mindset, but also help us support and uplift those in the field of education. So thank you, Dr. Estrada. I really appreciate your visit here. It was amazing.
Yeah, we had lots of fun. Priscilla also did the 10-week interpreters course. Priscilla, do you want to say something about the interpreter course? Because we actually, the applications are still open until February 14th. I always have February 14th in mind because it's kind of a cool date because people always remember it, but it's filled with, being open-hearted and, being responsive to the needs of the children and youth in Utah. So do you want to say, Priscilla, something about your experience with the course, the interpreter's course?
Yes, of course. I loved taking the course because it was simple. I think that's very important, especially for who studies really hard or is working really hard. We had a lot of people in our first cohort. So it was like really interesting to see like how people are handling translation in other schools, because we could we had moments to share experiences while we had like the Zoom meetings. I think that was very effective. And the other thing that I thought was really cool was like, especially the first module, we learned like how to behave while we are translating. So usually people don't think about those specific rules that we have to follow when we are being professionals interpreting, right? So I think it was very effective, and I actually just sent like an email to all my people here, encouraging them to take the course too. And I'm excited for course number 2. Will that be something that's going to happen soon?
Yeah, it is. The the company, it's I think Linguist, we actually, and this is due to Leah Voorhees, we had a contract that we sent out for the next 7 years. So it's going to be sustainable for the advanced coursework. And I met with them and they redesigned their course to actually fit the educational needs that we have, special education with scenarios, as well as HB 302, which I think it's the only course in the entire country that really focuses on state legislation and the role of the interpreter that's so important with our students who are speaking, different languages. So that'll be opened up in February as well. So thanks for asking, Priscilla.
Yeah, so I'll be there for sure. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask Davis people, so Sue Caldwell, because we just spent a wonderful time with Sue and her team in Davis. Even though I had kind of a tooth emergency and I have to finish, you know, those courses, those observations a little bit later. We already have them scheduled. So Sue, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience and the kind of the fun that we actually had?
Absolutely. Priscilla, you did a fabulous job explaining kind of the process of change that Christelle leads us through. So thank you for you really covering it and doing a great job with that. Christelle's promising practices observation tool is really amazing. And what was really fun is to get the opportunity to have Christelle walk us through that and get us ready for that. We went to a school and the principal chose a teacher that she thought was going to be perfect for all of us to do our initial observations so we could kind of calibrate ourselves before we went out into the school to do the rest of the observations. And I will tell you that my administrator hat came on, school administrator hat. I've been a principal for many years before my current position. And as we walked into that class, the teacher was a little bit in chaos. It was a special education class, and she had prepared to do something else, and then her co-teachers told her she had to do this instead. And so it was kind of on the fly for her, and now she has all these people in her room. Unexpectedly, the principal said that someone might be dropping by, but not the whole team. And so it kind of caught her unawares. I was at first really caught up in things like, what is this curriculum that she's using? And how has she not practiced her technology? And so some of the negative things started coming out in my mind, and ways that I could help her be more efficient and effective with just the kinds of teaching practices. But so we stayed and we all wrote down on this tool some of our observations, and Christelle had, said that we're not here to evaluate. We need to look for those promising practices. And when we went back in to meet following that observation together, I learned a lot from Christelle, because the things that she saw in this, I mean, you just heard in Weber about these fantastic science teacher where they went in and they could see this. This was not that. I'm not saying that this is not a fantastic teacher. This was not a fantastic moment for this teacher that we all got to see. And yet Christelle took that moment and taught us through her leadership in this area what kinds of things that teacher was doing so well to provide access for those kids. And it just reframed how we can think about and change our mindset as we go in to look for those assets and those promising practices, rather than just coming in and, because I was like, oh my gosh, what is this curriculum? You know, all of those kinds of things. So it was a really great learning experience for me, and I'm anxious to be able to spend some more time with Christelle at a couple more schools in the upcoming time.
So thanks, Sue. And just to be really clear, one of the reasons this observation tool has gone into so many iterations is that when we got feedback during the Obama administration, when ESSA was reauthorized, one of the things that peer reviewers said about our plan, the Title III plan, was how is the state agency going to ensure that students learning English have access to grade level content? So if they're asking us as a state agency to actually ensure that grade level content is accessible, then observing classrooms so that we can actually see the kinds of promising practices that make content accessible is what we should be doing. You know, it shouldn't be looking at deficits and demoralizing teachers and principals and schools and everybody else who are trying to work so hard in difficult situations. You know, and so that's pretty much the way in which the observation tool has been redesigned. I can't even tell you how many times, probably about, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. I see Bev there, and I also see Michelle Loveday. Both Bev and Michelle didn't have the advantage of having a redesigned observation tool uh, because I learned so much meeting with them and thinking about, you know, what would make it more manageable and clearer to help observers at the district level actually be asset based. So, Bev, do you want to say anything, or Michelle, do you want to say anything about your experiences, which are kind of different than the people I just called on?
Yeah, for us, I think even with, seeing the updated observation tool, as we moved forward with the schools that did receive the Title III observation, we're able to go in and talk with them about, the commendations and the recommendations and next steps they want to take. And so they really are, going to use the updated version to go in and work with teachers, discuss things at faculty meetings so that they can really use what they're already doing in this school to enhance the discussions. There were classrooms set up at one of the middle schools where they were set up to have discussions, but then they weren't engaging in that. And the principal recognized how they were on the other end of the pendulum, so much of making sure discipline was in place that they didn't feel comfortable with that controlled chaos, right, of discussion and then bringing them back. So they were already like, okay, we're going to practice what that looks like and use the tool as a focus point. So I think it's a good, tipping point for our team to help them in conversations and making sure that reading, writing, speaking, and listening is within the classroom structure.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Michelle's team, you know, they were really extraordinary, and in some ways, I don't know, they were kind of, I was practicing on them because it was the first time we'd actually, you know, done this. And so, you know, Michelle and I would debrief after kind of every meeting and, you know, talk about the dynamics and, you know, what actually made a difference that created the kind of relationship between districts and schools that would actually help teachers and administrators really look at the kinds of commendations that could build on what teachers are already doing instead of continually laying stuff on top of teachers and expecting them to do all of it. I mean, It's not humanly possible. So it's really the basis of appreciative inquiry, which is you actually appreciate other human beings in a really constructive way. So when people get the report and the district people give me their observations, after we've gone over it, there are lots of teacher commendations. And so these teacher commendations can really help principals work with teachers in a different way, and departments and grade level teams and all of that kind of stuff. So Michelle, thanks. Thanks so much. So Bev, I'm going to have you. Bev was this, Canyons was the second group that I was working with. So I'd learned from Jordan, and then I kind of changed, when I met with Canyons people. So I'm just a learner. I mean, I'm quick to learn about the mistakes I've made, and I try to adjust quickly. So Bev, do you want to say something?
Yeah. So it's already been mentioned before, but this is a shift, right? To take our school leaders and go in and look for what is happening as opposed to what's not happening. And it was really hard. And some of our schools really got that this was not evaluative, some of our observers, and some it took a little bit more time. But interestingly enough, we're also doing some learning with Wested and the quality teaching for English learners. And the classroom snapshot tools are just that, going in and looking at what evidence of these things that we know are high quality um, pedagogy, right? What evidence are we seeing of those? Not here's a checklist and mark down what you see. It was kind of interesting. Some of the schools that they were starting to put that together. So that was and Christelle and I spent a lot of time afterwards talking and going through. It was really hard to get teachers, not hard, but it's just an unnatural shift for some to think about walking into a classroom and looking for what is happening, even in amidst the chaos that might be going on, as opposed to an evaluation. But it was a helpful tool, definitely an experience to get the conversation around that going.
Thanks a lot, Bev. I'm checking to see if Levi is here or David Gomez. So he might not, so Levi is the assistant principal of the largest high school in the entire state. It's like 3,900. It's like 4,000 students. And so Levi was amazing. He actually came with me most of the day. And we debriefed every single observation, and talked about the way in which he could work with that teacher in a different way. And so I think, this is kind of the whole point. The point is, the only way you can actually adjust instruction, this is adult learning, but it also works with kids, right? Is you give them the kind of feedback so that they can actually better understand what they're doing is making a difference and how they can maximize it, right? So that's really the whole point of, including district personnel and doing observations together. The first observation we do together, and then we debrief it based on, you know, helping people change their mindset about trying to fix everything, trying to fix this teacher, all that kind of stuff. The other thing with charter schools, I'm asking, I see Esther here, when we do our observation, she's going to come with me, right? Same thing with Monticello. And so, whoever's on the administrative team is welcome, because it does, it's taken me a long time to figure out how to, take the kind of opinionated evaluations away from being, what shall I say, not as supportive to teachers as we would want them to be, right? So, does anybody have anything else to say before we go to the next topic? And let me look at the chat for a minute. Oh, it's just from Skylar. Uh, the other thing is, I actually have like lots of fun I have lots of fun when I go to schools and when I'm working with district teams. I mean, it's an incredible joy. It's an honor. It's a privilege. You know, on Wednesday, I spent time working with the state counselors on HB 302 and HB 230, which I actually discovered from interpreters that there were a lot of counselors and administrators who weren't that familiar with the role of an interpreter in the way in which it's defined in Dan Johnson's bill, which is interesting because Dan connected with me and wanted me to work with Colorado, who's taking the HB 203 bill or 302 bill and adapting it for Colorado for interpretation, which is pretty exciting because it means that this legislation is having a national impact. And so we should be proud of this, you know, instead of being so, what shall I say, overly anxious, because it's easy right now to become either terrified or overly anxious or distressed, you know, because we're trying to protect the students, you know, whose families have, you know, given us charge of. So anything else before I actually, believe it or not, I prepared a PowerPoint. I'm actually good at doing this, but I generally don't like to do it. But I'm just going to say that the reason I did this, it's really important for all of us to understand what people are doing all over the state, all over Utah to protect children of immigrants and, you know, refugees and asylees. And I think Anya's here. There's a resource also that was sent by the Navajo tribal president. And I'm not sure if I sent it out to you or not, but uh, so urban Indians or Native Americans, urban Navajo children are being harassed because they think they're immigrants. If you can imagine. I mean, think about this. The Navajo people have been on this continent for over 10,000 years. 10,000 years. The Taos Pueblo is the oldest living settlement in the United States. 10,000 years. And yet, our Native American children who live in the cities are being harassed. There was even a young man from Costco, a young student, who was attacked. So I know Anya has to actually take her father to medical. So I don't think she's here. But the point I'm making is,
I'm here, Christelle.
oh, you are. Do you want to
Yes.
say, something about the work that you're doing? One thing I want to say is, when I visited Anya, who's an Alpine, that will be divided up into 3 districts, with one South district having all Title I schools. This division is intentional by a group of people. So when I met with the high school that I provided funds for the year before, because people had waived funds, we ended up using the observation tool, and one of Anya's team members said, wouldn't this tool make a really good basis for a lesson study? So because they suggested this, I haven't finished designing it. I'm using the observation tool to design a 10-week course on lesson study that I'll send you links to that you can replicate using the observation tool. Because if you actually design lessons based on the observation tool, then teachers will actually know, right, what are the research-based practices that will make a difference, a high effect size for their students. One that people always do, you know, is summarizing, but they don't really know how to do it very well. So that has a really high size of, effect size, and so does, activating prior knowledge and connecting it to new knowledge. These are all proven by Hattie and just makes common sense, but teachers they don't really know how effective those strategies are. Just think if they actually use that to design the tool to design their lessons based on the research, you know, they would actually see how capable they already are and not be so anxious. Right. So that as soon as the lesson study design is finished, I'm almost finished with it. I think I'm on um, module 6 or something like that. I'll send out the link to all of you. Okay. Anya, do you want to actually say anything about what Alpine is doing, the current Alpine?
Current Alpine. Yes, so I really appreciate all of those that have shared with us, your statements. I know Grana did a really great, fabulous Q&A document that we're looking into it to make a formal guidance and support. But one thing that really became clear to us is that it's not only talking points and, what we can and cannot do, but we really needed to look at the supports and resources for families whose parents may be deported, and which we already are experiencing and know of 8 cases in our district. These are not isolated to just Title I areas or South area. We've had people in Eagle Mountain that are already affected. So we're working with our student services crisis team, and our community outreach leads and coordinators are putting together resources for our families in case of deportation, what is available, what free resources are in our community. And our counselors and social workers are looking at guidance to know what can we do in case of a child who may become an unaccompanied youth. What are the, what might be some of the implications when we may not have a guardian, who gives the approval for support if needed. So they're working on that. And then we also are working with our SROs, because part of some of the, additional documentation that Christelle shared with me is the role of police officers. So trying to be proactive and communicating and coordinating our efforts with all of the different departments so that we could create a, whole child support. I think that what we are seeing already, obviously, is deportation. We're yet to see an officer, right, coming into the school. Not to say that that may not happen, but we needed to address those immediate needs, as we're seeing probably an uptake in our McKinney-Vento as well. That's also a area that we're working on. And 2 of our families that were affected, now we do have 2 unaccompanied youth students that we are supporting through this process.
Yeah, so thanks, Anya. I really appreciate what you're saying, because that puts the immediacy of the situation into our hands. What I sent to Anya, I'll send to you also, and I think I've included in a larger document with all the resources. The PowerPoint I'm sharing, I started early, very early on, and then I found all these resources and sent them to the USBE leadership. And so they've actually combined all of those, and I've put additional things in, like the Granite FAQ, which is was very impressive as well. So, and it's for school administrators. So it helps administrators, not be terrified and not know what to say when they're actually confronted. So we have an obligation to help principals and administrators and teachers as well in understanding the actual rights that they have, and they can't be forced to give over. The document actually is pretty clear. They actually quote the supremacy, I don't know how much you know, but the supremacy clause in the Constitution, which I think is pretty interesting, because they're using that and the 1798 Alien and Seditions Act to say that local law enforcement must follow the mass deportation order. So I think it's important for us to actually know what legal things are being used to justify eliminating schools, churches, and hospitals as safe areas. Okay, so any other comments before I do the PowerPoint? And remember, this PowerPoint was done very early, and it was actually based on a document that Liliana sent to us, and I sent out to you.
Christelle, Christelle,
Michelle.
before you do share, I did want to share on Jordan School District side, as you have seen in our emails back and forth to each other of what everybody's sending, similar to what Anya is saying. And it's been a very mindful process, talking to the superintendent and the cabinet. And then yesterday he brought in our ethnic advisory council and our general council. And the biggest piece for them is similar in the sense that we want to make sure that we're relying on the information get out as opposed to advocacy, so that that doesn't harm or put a target on anyone's back. So we want to have proactive communication, and we're aware that students are receiving information at their level of understanding and then sharing it with parents. And so we want to really work on the understanding for the students level. And we also are aware that we need to train our front office on what they can send out and what they can't and what they shouldn't. And so Tuesday and yesterday, our office was talking with administrative assistants and training and talking to them. He feels like in some areas that there's been too much information given out, because then you're making promises that districts can't honor. And so we're going to have, he feels like schools have the personal relationships with the parents. And so he sent a message out to principals, just a quick couple of liners of what to remind them, of the safety of the students and the information. And then he's going to have schools reach out to parents and ask about attendance issues, and starting there with attendance data, because we can control that, we can talk about that. And it also doesn't put a target on, like, because we are one of the districts that continually gets grammar requested. So if we have certain letters that go out to certain people, they're going to be like, well, who did you send them to and where did they live? And oh, they were mostly in this area. And so we're trying to avoid that, because of the 80% of our population, we know they do not have positive intent. And so we're focusing on attendance issues. We're seeing that at our family engagement centers last night and Wednesday night. The attendance was lower. A school had a community family night that's normally very busy. It was busy, but not as busy. And so we're starting with attendance. We're starting with schools to share and get out a memo about the importance of attendance. And then there's the question of how much, information do we give out before it goes into the advocacy? And so that's where Jordan District is right now.
Thanks, Michelle. And I also want to thank Bev for sharing her initial notice that she had written. I actually met with someone yesterday. It was a parent. Actually, I got my hair cut in, so it was my hairdresser who said, I'm so proud of being in Canyon School District because we received this letter assuring us of the safety of our children. She knew exactly what it said, and she said, I took this and sent it to all my neighbors and to say how proud I was of Canyons. So, Bev, I just want to thank you for your courage to be one of the first people to do that, as well as Salt Lake. Salt Lake, Salt Lake's affirmations now are actually a part of a lot of Instagram posts, which I think is really a powerful indication of the commitment of Utah educators in making sure that children and families are safe. We've always had the reputation of being, a welcoming state. The fact that the refugees, and I think this will be really poignant to Robin Williams, um, all those who ended up helping the army in Afghanistan and were promised refugee status. So they're stranded somewhere. Everything has been closed down and they're not being allowed to come to the country. And these are the ones I know that one of the people who actually was an excellent interpreter had worked for the United States Army. And, before this situation ended up coming. Robin, do you want to say anything about, the work you've done with Afghan refugees?
I think echoing like gratitude to this community, and I do know current circumstances right now are pretty devastating. With the person that you're referencing, Christelle, in November, he'd gotten movement forward, and now everything's off the table again. And we do have people who are, if there is kind of a blanket, like sending people back who are midstream in the process, we have people who very much know that they'll be killed based on the relationship that they had working for the US government. But I actually have to apologize to everybody, and you especially, Christelle, because I'm scheduled today, so I'm popping in and out between meetings, and I have Katie who is fully participating. But if it's already been said, shut me off. But one of the things that we really are going after is our relationship with Murray Police Department and our RSOs. And what we're appealing to there is their sense of community and decency, right up to, and I think our RSOs have been great about understanding why. One of the newer ones is worried that he has to do as he's told. He doesn't want to lose his job. But by that token, we've also said, if you're at the table and there's this initial planning, we really need the police department to be saying, no, we're not going to go into schools and do this type of thing. The other part of that is I've put out messaging about really, can you afford it if we take video of you and put it nationally on news that your team is going into these schools. So there's like two sides of this. One is me being decent and saying, you're decent people, we've had this relationship, please don't do this. The other part of that is asking people to think about the consequences should they decide to do police action within our schools. So anyway, there's my 2 cents, and thank you, Christelle, for the shout out.
Thanks, Robin. Thank you. So I'm trying to decide if I should tell you this or not, but I'm going to. So when this first started, I'm not going to say the person, but they from USBE said, I think it was the Public Relations Division or something. I don't really know. I don't really know about this. Can you talk to a reporter? And I said, well, I'll give you all the information so you can be knowledgeable. But I've had this experience before in California based on when I was a government teacher, and there was a bill that was very similar to overturning Plyler and making sure immigrant students and undocumented kids wouldn't be educated. And so the government class really did all the research, and we did the old-fashioned teach-ins in all the classrooms that wanted us to come, wanted the students to come, not me. Then we had a rally, and a newspaper reporter came to me and said, and of course it ended up being in the paper. She said to me, well, where were you born? And I said, well, I was born in Los Angeles. I have the advantage and the misfortune of having a name like Estrada. And then she said, well, where were your parents born? And I'm thinking, okay, well, this is going to be endless. So the question ends up being, I think, something that we all realize and that Michelle Loveday brought up. You really can't sacrifice your advocacy for students by not being strategic. So you have to be careful. And when you're sending out things or making comments or whatever it is, you have to make sure that you don't jeopardize being a target. I'm just being honest with you. We can't afford to lose any of you at all. Right? This is a really important community. Okay, so any other comments before I do the PowerPoint? And remember, I did this PowerPoint, and I'm just going to be honest, I was kind of a nervous wreck because there was no statement coming out from USBE. So I had this whole speech prepared for you to say, this is a personal thing, and this is a resource, and I'm just sending it to you. It has nothing to do with USBE. It's just a resource. So then yesterday, I got an extensive, all the resources from Alexa Cunningham through Sarah Young, who's now over student support and now an assistant superintendent, of all the resources that I had previously shared with you, and more resources from all over the country. And that's not in a PowerPoint, but it's in a document that I'll send to you with links. So, which is really important because when you see all the links and all the other resources and the reactions all over the country, then you'll actually have a different resource so that you don't have to say it's like your resource from, Canyons or Weber or, Alpine or whatever. It's just this factual resource that has been provided for you. So Bev, do you want to ask your question? Is it a question?
No, someone asked for the messaging. I just shared a link with what was sent to the families and to the schools.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have things in the chat. So thanks, Bev, for sharing the document. Thanks, Michelle, everyone. So what I'm going to do is, and you have to tell me if you can actually see the PowerPoint, okay? Okay, you're going to have to wait just a minute until I get it up on my screen. Yeah, I'm going to try it again.
We see your, oh, there we go. Voices for Utah Children.
Yep, you got it?
Yep, we see it.
Okay, so let me see. Okay, so we'll just have to do it this way. I'm trying to look for the top of it, but that's all right. And you notice one of the reasons I put Voices for Utah Children, I put it there because I wanted people to know that this was a resource that came from them. It didn't come from USBE, right? So just so you know, I mean, that's kind of the strategy that I was using. And this was done before I got all these resources from USBE. So let me just turn to the next one. And they're a great advocacy group. And they do really amazing work. So if you're not familiar with them, I think I have the link, and if I don't, I'll give you the link when I send out the PowerPoint. So again, you all know the executive order. I'm not going to go over this. The idea of sensitive areas. I'm hoping that I know I've seen that churches are trying to actually, and I'm, I'm trying to make connections with churches so that they would actually step up, which would be a really good thing. Hospitals, I don't know. I can't even imagine, you know, I don't know. Because you think of HIPAA. I mean, how are they going to know who people are? It's just like FERPA. I don't really get this reasoning, but anyway. Uh, Again, this is the idea of increased presence of ICE agents um, within immigrant communities. Um, I know that other places the last previous administration, there were ICE agents outside of places that families did shopping, like Costco and Walmart, and of course, I've heard from people already about decreased attendance, right? Because parents obviously don't want their children out in public. Again, protect student information. We have FERPA on our side, which I think is really important. Um, Again, many of you have already done this, communicate with families, provide resources, especially counseling. One of the things that I loved about Salt Lake's letter was it actually said that, counselors were available um, to students if they were stressed out. One of the things I contacted a couple of friends who teach ELD classes, and they're doing amazing things because in the ELD classes, the kids are pretty distraught. So, I mean, that's kind of a heads up for you in relationship to instruction and working with teachers who teach ELD. Again, this is about reviewing policies and updating them. And I know it ends up being an issue because if it's a policy, it would have to go through your board. So, um, that piece is a challenge, but I think it's important. This is a sample letter. And I think this sample letter comes from Salt Lake, or it might come from Canyons. But these are just resources for you. This is just a resource for you that I'll send out with all the other resources that I've received. This one I think is really important to make sure the contact information is updated. And that's why I think, training people in the front office is really important. And emergency contacts, individuals who don't need to be family members, but really can be trusted. So I think this is, really a critical thing that front office people can do. And again, I just got another another email about the Aspire, student data system. Okay, just so you know, there's no way that anyone can identify, a student that's an immigrant. This is against Plyler, it's against federal law. I don't care about it's a constitutional issue. So, someone asked me about, coding refugee students, which is a different issue, right? But apparently now it's becoming an issue because refugees are not now, everything is suspended. And so refugees can't even come into the country. But in Aspire, that's the other thing, because Aspire actually asks you and gives you the identification of refugees. So I'm going to talk to Erin about this, and if anybody has an opinion about being concerned about refugees being targeted, we can talk later. And again, I just put the blank in there. Will not initiate engagement with federal immigration authorities for the purpose of sharing information. So this is a pretty strong stance. When I was the assistant principal in California, I was actually accused of, violating the Patriot Act because I wouldn't let the military come in and interrupt instruction. So this whole thing about, the education is a priority of our students, and anything that interrupts it, cannot be allowed. So I put some online resources in here. But I can also give you everything that I've collected from, and the reason this is important that it's collected through USBE. So this resource is what's been sent to superintendents and from other places all over the all over the country. So are there any questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question, Christelle. I'm wondering if there's been any direct communication with the superintendents with this information that you're sharing with us. Or I've been passing it on, but I'm wondering if they're getting it from another source as well.
Yeah, actually what I found out yesterday, and I see that Levi's here, so I'm going to put him on in a minute. Hi, Levi. This didn't happen until yesterday. I actually found out that Lexi Cunningham, who is the president of the Superintendent's Association, has been sending out information. And so that's the information I'm going to send out to you so that you can actually see what superintendents are getting. Okay, it's not in a PowerPoint, but it's in a document with all these resources. And Lexi Cunningham's introduction to superintendents with an FAQ related to superintendents. So the association, besides the work, of sending stuff to you guys, the Superintendents Association has actually, the president, Alexi Cunningham, has sent out things to the superintendent.
Thank
So that's helpful, right? So that we all know that, that they're not being left out.
Yeah, the messaging is coming from many different areas, and I think that's important to me. So I appreciate knowing that. Thank you, Christelle.
Well, you're welcome. So I'm going to move to Levi. Levi is this amazing assistant principal. I'll have him introduce himself, but from Granger, the largest high school in Utah. So Levi, do you want to say a little bit about our experience together? You just made me want to come and teach at Granger. I just fell
Hey,
in
well,
love with I fell in love with your students.
yeah, no, it was an awesome experience. Yeah, so my name's Levi Negley, Granger High School assistant principal. The Title III classroom observation tool was my first experience using that when we did our observations together. I believe we did two full observations, and then I've kind of tinkered with the tool since then. But what I really appreciate about it is that it really hones in for us, and then also, if teachers are aware of, of kind of what we're looking for, it just really summarizes and concisely gives us like a real clear idea of like, hey, here are the practices that we're looking for that are really going to support these multi-language learners. And it kind of demystifies that, right? And it simplifies it as well, and just shows like, hey, here it is. Here's this one pager. We can observe these real clearly, real quickly, and then boom, we have all that information in one place. And then it also helps me as an administrator just to have a quick checklist, see. And then what I really appreciated is that it says like, hey, here's where we're at, and then now we can go ahead and build from there. So it's this asset-based thinking, which is contradictory to some of the rubrics that I've used before. We're saying, hey, you're hitting a 1 or you're hitting a 2. Well, it's like, well, regardless of where you might be within that rubric, hey, we have a place to build from, and this is where we're at. This is our foundation. Now, here's how you can amplify this. This is a way to make this your practice even stronger. And I think for me as an administrator, what that really gives me access to is an ability to have these positive conversations, positive coaching moments where we can establish a ground zero in relation to, our population, where we have so many of our students who, not only all students, but so many of our students who really need these practices consistently delivered. And it just gives us a place to start that conversation and say, okay, here's the next step. here's the next step, and it's laid out in such a way where we can have that conversation in an objective and positive way. So that's what I really, really appreciated about this. And it was just a fantastic experience because it brings you back when you're the administrator and you're kind of, stepped away from the classroom. It just reinvigorates that sense of like, oh, you know, the teaching practice is so beautiful, and this really gives access to be able to have those conversations and really, lift the teachers up, and ultimately that lifts our students up, right? So that was my experience. It was just fantastic, and I'm really excited to continue to deepen my understanding and practice with it as well.
Thanks, Levi. The other thing that was really interesting is the first period at Granger, when I was there, was taught by the superintendent, Ben Horsley, which I love. And when I was an assistant principal, I was always teaching. I was co-teaching, as well as doing a master schedule for 3,000 students. So teaching and being closer to the teaching experience helps everybody. It helps administrators, it helps district people, and so it does make a difference because, we're all in this together. And I think now more than ever before, we have to have that sense of solidarity. Uh, Levi, it was so much fun hanging out with you and observing. And afterward, we did a debrief with the tool, and just, we had a great time. It was just really a wonderful experience for me. So
Yeah.
thank you. If you
Yeah,
ever need a government, economics, or, humanities, or, an English teacher, just give me a call.
Hey, you'll be at the top of the list. All
Thanks,
right.
Levi.
Hey, thank you,
Okay.
everyone. Have a great day. Happy Friday.
Okay. Take care, Levi.
Goodbye.
Okay. So any last comments before this is going to be a shortened meeting because I know we're all like overwhelmed. Um, any comments?
Hey,
Crystal, I just,
Crystal. Oh,
oh, sorry, I came late, so I just wanted to make sure that, did you say you would email all the resources and documents? Okay, just wanted to make sure. Sorry, I was a little late. Thank you.
No, that's okay.
while I have so many comments about everything, I want to go, I can I ask a question about the interpreter training course?
Yeah.
Obviously I'm monolingual, right? But I'd love to take the course just so that, because I'm overseeing a lot of our interpreters and have to have conversations when people aren't. Can I still participate without speaking another language?
Yeah, you can. The reason I think it's important is, and if anybody wants to, you should feel welcome because, and you don't need to do an application. You can just, email me that you want to join. And the reason is it goes over the national standards for interpreters. Right. And
So,
so Priscilla's shaking her head because,
okay.
if we don't know the national standards for interpreters, I'm not sure how we can help interpreters.
So could I potentially just send you a list of the people in my office that work closely with our interpreting staff
Yep.
and just say, I would like these people to be enrolled in the course? Okay,
Yeah.
without doing the whole application thing. Okay,
No, yeah.
perfect. Okay,
Yeah, you don't need to do the, and that would be for everybody else in the group. Just send me a list of people that you want to be in the course. Um, Priscilla, do you want to say anything about the
Yeah,
national standard? See, because if you look at this is really the goal. It's about the national standards. If we all don't really, if we don't know the national standards and we're not helping our interpreters, I think, it's a missed opportunity. So Priscilla, do you want to say something?
yeah, I think it will be a great opportunity and a great experience for a person who does not speak the language. Just because, as I said before, the first module specifically explains exactly how you should behave as an interpreter. And I think that's like something I had no idea. And I've been doing this my whole life, right? Because I speak multiple languages. So it was very interesting to know. And then we talked to our interpreters about like, okay, so how you should behave, first of all, things that are considered appropriate or not, right? And also everything based on the law, right? So I think that, yeah. So even if you don't speak a language, it will be very, very interesting to take the course.
Yeah. So I know I'm insane, but I'm actually taking the advanced course because I want to actually see how the advanced course is actually preparing, the initial interpreters to actually then take on all the training in the advanced course. Because the goal is to build the local capacity so that you all will have access for the next 7 years. Right, that's my goal. Not that I'll be here, I might get hit by a truck tomorrow, I don't know. But I'm actually thinking long term for all of you. I mean, to me, that's what makes a difference to when people talk about sustainability and they don't really talk about building capacity, I don't really understand that. So that's actually the goal of this. So I'm actually taking the advanced course and giving feedback to, our contractor because they actually have scenarios. Um, and in the Zoom meetings, when you hear interpreters talk about their experiences, I think some of you, your hair would stand on end in horror about what sometimes happens and miscommunication in, especially related to special ed. When those issues came up in our Zoom meetings, we actually had Kim Fratto at USBE do an entire session to help people understand because some people were giving, really strange information when parents would ask, well, what extra instruction can we have students do? And then the person would say, well, you don't. And then and the parents were saying to the interpreter, like, what do you mean? What does the principal mean that I can't have additional support for my child? So there was just a lot of confusion that ended up happening. I don't remember, Priscilla, if you were there when that happened. Uh, but as well as the language, the language of the IEP and interpreters not understanding it. So then we did this whole thing on translating all the glossary words and interpretation into Spanish and made it available, right? Because it doesn't help when the interpreter doesn't really understand how to translate something that a principal or a special ed person is saying to a parent who doesn't understand it.
So remind me, the course itself is the modules are asynchronous, but there are the Zoom meetings to come together, or are there specific meeting times for people that are participating in the course?
Yeah, so the way I did it last year, which was exhausting, but I did it anyway. So it's 10, it's open, it's just for those who submitted the application, for any of you who want to send me, we enroll you in a 10-week course. You have access to the syllabus, so you can actually see the syllabus. And then I think we had 8 Zoom meetings that I did like at 4, I did a 4 o'clock Zoom meeting for those people who could do it, and then a 7 o'clock Zoom meeting the same day for, people who were engaged in work and weren't like in schools. Do you know what I mean? And then that was kind of an open experience where I would go over the standard and then I would ask people to share their experiences. And so that's where we found out we fortunately, I guess. I don't know, Priscilla, if you remember this. One interpreter said that this family came to her and said that the school nurse would not wanted her to waive the right for immunizations, but the parent wanted her children immunized, but the nurse wouldn't provide anything so that she could actually have her kids immunized. She wanted her to actually fill out a release form requesting that students be free from immunizations. I mean, I didn't even know that was happening. And so then, I went to the public health people and to the USBE nurse people and said, why, when families want their kids immunized, are nurses giving them, opt-out forms? So the Zoom meetings were really helpful because, how did I know that was happening? I didn't know that was happening. So it's like a 10-week course, very open. I think I gave too much time last time. So it was like we started on, I don't know, February 14th or February maybe I think a little bit later, they signed up for the USBE Canvas course, right? And they could do the modules on their own based on the YouTube videos and all the national standards. So it's pretty much, their time instead of, this whole you have to do it on Sunday evening, blah, blah, blah. So it was very open and they could do it whenever they wanted. And then we had Zoom sessions with a log to show their attendance. And some of the Zoom logs that they sent me were just really amazing. How much, what did you learn that made a difference? Nothing specific, like, kind of high level DOK4 questions, actually. If I ever took those logs and, someone would volunteer to do a research paper that we could submit, it would be pretty impressive. Because it would debunk a lot of people's attitudes about things they can't do. Right? I mean, I think that's the other thing. Oh, well, we could never do this. You know that Provo took this course and had someone receive the 10-week certification, and now they're using that course to do a district certification with 2 interpreters in every of their 40 schools. So they have 80 people in Provo actually taking the 10-week course and certifying them through the district. So this is what I mean by building capacity. We've provided, USBE and Leah, we've provided this kind of development approach, but then we pass it on so districts can use it, right, to build their own capacity for a sustainable outcome for their families. So Bev, does that answer your question?
I think so. I'm just, as I'm talking to school staff, so they have to attend all 10 Zooms or to
Yeah.
get the certification, right?
Yeah, and it's always recorded. So it's, there's actually the Zoom sessions are recorded, and so they have a link. So if they can't make it to the on live Zoom sessions, they can do the ones that are recorded. Right.
Okay.
So the whole goal is to make it so incredibly accessible to people who are working full time, who are, who have experience interpreting, but they don't really know what the standards are. The other big thing was, which makes me a little sad in some ways, interpreters would, in these meetings, would say to me, well, the parent, I know this family really well, and I know the situation of the parent. So can't I intervene for the parent with the principal? And I said, no, this is advocacy. You're not an advocate, you're an interpreter. So then the person said, well, what do I do? I said, well, you have to tell the principal this and you have to recuse yourself if you can't stick to the national standards about the fidelity of interpretation. So it's hard. I mean, it's hard for interpreters who know families, and it's just a real challenge for them. But I'm telling you, the 52 interpreters who are now certified, they've learned so much and they're such an asset to Utah's family. And that's kind of what we're doing. So any other questions?
Yeah, Michelle here. So we have my 2 teacher specialists that have gone through the training and the workshops and whatnot. And so we're trying to put together something to plan probably in June for our for people that are interested here. So I guess they're playing around with some things and they're trying to work smarter and not harder and reduce grading and things like that. And so they were wondering, with it being the 10 course, is that something that they could do in 2 days? Is it okay if they change the format but utilize the material? I guess they were just seeing.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And I think the other reason they can see, that's the point of me developing something that you would adapt. It's just like the ESL competency-based endorsement. There are so many people here who have designed the ESL competency-based endorsement based on their context and the resources that they have. I mean, that's how you think differently about upscaling and disseminating, practices that would help educators adjust what they're doing based on who their students are, right? Instead of some kind of, I don't know, whether you're an adult student, an adult learner, or uh, an elementary school learner, or whatever learner you are, if you're not adjusting the actual experience for the learner, then we're not really respecting, you know, the qualities of being a professional who understands how to adapt and adjust to the needs of the learner. That's kind of what we're focusing. Does that help, Michelle? Okay, great. This is all adult learning principles from, Jane Vella, my 96-year-old friend that I work with. She was a Mary Knoll sister too, by the way. And her whole thing, her first thing is, how do you create safe learning environments? That's like it. How do you create safe learning environments for the learner to take chances without being judged? So do you want me to say that again? You should write it down on your hand. That's the whole point of being, if we're learning together, then how does our behavior actually reflect that to the person that we're with? If people think we're judging them all the time, then why do you think they would make any progress? Why would they want to be a learner, if they feel judged? Okay, any other comments before I stop the recording, and then I'll just stay on and, not do the recording, and anybody can ask me anything.
I just dropped into the chat a Spanish English dictionary for IDEA terms online if anyone needs that.
Jenny, thank you. I'm excited to come to Box Elder. Box Elder Jenny has been one of these, I'm just going to say this, one of these amazing people when I couldn't get other people from another agency to come with me. And so was Thais. They were always there. They would, travel wherever and, to wherever I was doing visits. And so, Jenny, I just want to thank you for all your support. You've been really wonderful and a good friend.
Thank you. It has been a good experience for me too, and I'm excited for our district to have you come.
Yeah, we'll have a good time. I'm just telling you. There's something else in the chat that says, do you have a copy or link where I could access? So this is
For
Rhonda saying,
Ogden statement.
it's Ogden. Ogden says, shout out to Ogden School District for Safe School Resolution that speaks about ICE. I actually have a copy of that. So it's actually, you can actually put in the link, Rhonda, but I've actually included your resolution in the documents that I'm going to send out to everybody. Their resolution, Ogden was way ahead. You did the resolution. What year did you do the resolution? Rhonda. We can't hear you. That's okay. I think was it 2017? I think it was 27. Yeah. Their resolution is just, brilliant. And it was passed in 2017. It's just amazing. And when and it's with the collection that I'm going to send you. So you'll have all these resources too. And remember, this is not against, executive orders. It's not about any of that. It's not, you don't need to worry that you're going to have, a target on your back or anything like that. This is about resources being shared. We're not approving it, disapproving it. We're not doing anything like that. You will have to decide how you want to use which resource, right? Okay.
Can I give
Excellent.
just a quick shout out? Holly Bell is on here, and I don't know if Megan Bushnell, she's operating in a different position, but from Box Elder, they were able to come to our What I Wish You Knew conference here in Jordan on Tuesday and had a good time. And so just grateful for this group and the support that we have for one another, the text messages going back and forth, the emails going back and forth, suggestions, ideas, and encouragement, uplift. I just don't think I'd be able to have made it through this week, and then the next few weeks, I know a few of us are getting together to work on a Title III statement that we'll be happy to share with all of you on the Wasatch front end. I know our friends down south can't make it, but we'll make sure to share that with you. We just want to do a one-pager where all of our district people that are going up to legislatures have, so that they are using the same language surrounding Title III, and then adding our own data from our district on that. But it's just been great because everybody was like, yes, let's get together. And here we are gonna work and see the new Salt Lake building. So thank you all for your support. Seriously, I couldn't do this job without you all.
Thanks, Michelle. And I want to also thank Holly and Max. I don't think he's on here, but Holly was one of the people at USBE who instantly, emailed me and said, how can I support you? And so Max did too. And so these things are really important so that you all know that this community, is designed to be a professional learning community that is statewide, right? We're all learning from and with each other. And that's kind of the commitment. And the fact that a group of you, are putting something together where you actually know that I can't because I'm at the state school board. Even though I all want you to know that I don't work for the school board, I actually work for the children of Utah. That's who I work for. Okay. So anything else before before I stop the recording? And then you can stay on as well. Okay, I love you all.